Hello, all. This is Najima Smalls with another session of the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners for chiming in and coming out to hear what we have to talk about every other week. I'm super excited to have this conversation because this is the conversation that many Black women have, particularly nowadays in this particular generation. We're talking about happiness, and you hear it all the time. Uh, the conversations surrounding having it all, does she having it all? Happiness, what does happiness look like? What doesn't, what isn't happiness? And I say our generation is having this conversation because I don't remember our elders having conversations like this. So, I have special guests who I'm super excited to have on the show. She's truly a delight, a very accomplished woman who is the happiness expert. Um, Her name is Brandi, and Brandi is a former executive. She's worked in the Fortune 500 space, and now she is a performance coach and speaker. And she talks quite a bit on the topic of happiness. And so I'm super delighted to have this conversation this evening with none other than Brandi Hudson. Brandi, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Najma. So happy to be here with you and excited for our conversation ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that being said, Brandy, we are just going to dive right into it.
Let's do it.
So, first question. How do you think many people in our society view happiness?
I think most people in our society view happiness as a nice to have, but not as a must have. They view it as like something extra that if they had it, it would be amazing. But they don't realize that it really is our birthright and that happiness is actually a smoke signal to tell us that we're on the right track and that we are meant to actually align with those high vibration emotions of happiness and love and peace and joy. And we're not meant to spend the majority of our time, which many of us do, in those dense emotions of shame and fear and worry and anxiety.
Wow, that's a great point. That's a good point. So I'm an empath, and with
Yeah.
that, I can pick up the emotions and feelings and the state of other people like very quickly, and I'm always dead on. I don't know what it is. It's just a part, just the way that I'm wired, right? And when I spoke to you, Brandy, you exude happiness to me. You exude that she's got all the things, right? So tell me, what isn't happiness?
What isn't or what is
What
it?
isn't? What is it not?
What is it not? Oh, I like to say that anything that is the absence of love is not happiness, right? And so when we look through our day, the percentage of our time that we spent disconnected from that love, which we all know, and it can be, two different kinds of love, but that state of love, that is unhappiness, and that is what creates what I call our happiness set point, right? Our happiness set point is where we spend the majority of our time. We might get like 10% higher and 10% lower, but we kind of have this steady state. And I want to back up and firstly say just thank you for that compliment, because I have worked really hard to be this happy. And
I
I have
like
earned
that.
it like I've earned some other things, and it did not come. I met one woman once, and she said, I was just born happy. I've been happy my whole life. And that is a gift. And I think most of us are born happy, but it took me a little time to get back to that little girl who probably was born very happy, but I had gotten away from her.
I love that. You said so many key things there. You had to work to get to that happiness. And I think we all have to do the work to find the things and the path that makes us happy, right? And I think we have to be very honest with ourselves in order to do
Yes.
that because I find even in my own life like I'll be doing something and I'm like, this is painful to me. This is you know, this is not doing it. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why am I doing this? Because
Yeah.
it gives the impression that I'm happy, or it's making someone else happy, and
Mm.
so that's where we've got to really think about the life that we want to have, that we want to cultivate. And sometimes I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to say something isn't making you happy, or this isn't where happiness is for me anymore.
Yeah. Think so. You said so many things there. So let's unpack some of them, right?
Mhm,
I mean, I think firstly, right, like it's the best work you'll ever do, right? So it is a heavy lift, and sometimes you do have to do some deep introspection that doesn't always feel good along the way, but I
mhm,
I say it's like a workout. Once you're done, you're always happy. You
mhm,
never finish a workout and you're like, "Oh, I wish I had just skipped the gym." You are happy that you went, right? And that's the same way this deep personal development work is for us. And so it's worthwhile work. Um, and I think, I invite people to really realize like these things that we're doing are the ways that we're showing up for people that aren't feeling fulfilling. I always have to say that slowly. Feeling fulfilling. It's because internally we aren't happy, right? So
mhm,
happiness is really this inside job, right? It shows up externally, right? So it shows up where you feel like, oh, I'm in a relationship that doesn't feel great to me. I'm at a job that doesn't feel good to me. I'm a couple pounds overweight and I don't like that about myself, right? My skin is breaking out. Those are all the external things that you are unhappy about, right? But happiness is an inside job. And then your happiness is your point of attraction for the rest of your life, right? So I tell people, every good thing in the world is attracted to happiness, right? So
mhm,
that's why I teach my clients that like, hey, you can never guarantee that success will make you happy. I argue it probably will not, but I can guarantee you that happiness will make you successful, right? Because you
mm,
can't help but be on this path to your greatest purpose when you're in this peaceful, aligned state.
mm,
Because you've cleared all the noise, you're in this state of coherence, and you can just walk in lockstep to where you're meant to be in this lifetime, right? And so we have to be happy on the inside. And I tell people, when you get into a lot of situations that feel unhappy, it's because that's the frequency, that's the wavelength, that's the point of attraction that you're at. And it's always you, which isn't meant as a judgment, it's meant as a position of power. If I am the point of attraction, then I can always change my life.
wow.
If it's someone else that's treating me bad, then they need to change in order for my life to be better. And that would be a tricky road to walk.
Right, exactly. I love that. And so what one of the powerful things I heard you say is that it's not I become happy once I become successful. It's in the reverse. I
Yes.
become successful once I attain happy. That's a total mind shift right there.
And it is such a mind shift. But what we know, right, is everything in this world vibrates at some level of
Mhm,
frequency, right? Like this is science, people. This isn't, mystical, magical. This is science. And things that have resonance are attracted to each other, right? And so you absolutely can have a lot of success by trying to push a boulder up a mountain. How do we know? Because like most Black people have taken that path,
mhm, mhm,
right? But we can shrink the timeline, we can shrink the path by getting to this place that resonates more clearly with where we're trying to go. And
mhm,
so if we spend most of our time, right, I say 80% of the work are actually all these things that people have unfortunately denoted as soft skills, but
mhm,
those are the skills that serve us the best in terms of like reaching our inherent potential, in terms of being as successful as we possibly can be.
great point. So how can you tell someone is happy? How can I do a check to see if I'm happy?
You know, I think if you have to ask if you're happy, you probably aren't,
Mhm.
right? And I think that you want to get really real with yourself, right? You want to, so you can just have this moment of introspection. If even after having to ask and having a moment of introspection, you don't know, then you can ask yourself, like, how many times in the day do I get frustrated? How
Mm.
easily do people upset me and I think it's them? How much
Wow.
friction do I have in my life? The opposite is like when we're in this state of happiness, what do we start to see? We start to see that life flows for us. We
Mhm.
start to see there's lots of synchronicities. Like for me, I always get a parking spot.
I love it.
My schedule always lines up for me. Once my assistant said, "Well, what do I do? Like, how do I hierarchy if you have this and this and this?" And I said, I have left that to the universe to figure out for me, right? Like, so things start to flow for you because you are resonating at that level, right? And so
Mm.
you can know how happy you are. You can see how happy you are by how tricky or challenging life feels. Now, the hard part about that is most of us start to believe that's just how life is, but it really isn't. It doesn't have to
Mm.
be.
Wow, that's so powerful. And so you think about it like, if you have a lot of clutter, right? Like a lot of clutter in your home, a lot of clutter in your car, a lot of clunky relationships, and, all of these things that are just not where they should be. And you're always feeling like you're running on fumes. That may be your sign that something is off. Like I'm big on, like, if my
You're
car
being
is messed.
kind. That is your
That
sign
is your
that something
sign,
is off.
right? And that's what I do. Like when my spaces get too disorganized, I'm like, okay, something's off.
Right.
I'm not doing something right. And so
Yeah.
that's my cue to, like, take a step back and sit with myself. And I love that you said, like, you got to be honest with yourself. You have to be, and I think that's hard, right? That's hard to say,
Mm,
I'm not happy, or doing XYZ doesn't make me happy. That's
doesn't make me
hard,
happy.
right?
Well, and I'm going to encourage you and all of our listeners, like, let's try to avoid telling our brain something is hard, right? Because the
That's
more we
true.
say to ourselves something is hard, then your brain's like, girl, my job is to prove you right. So if you
Right.
said it's hard, let me help you make it hard, right? So um, it is, it is something, it's a skill we need to build.
Hmm.
It is a skill we need to build to be able to say, I'm not going to do that. I was saying to someone this morning that it was a client, and I was saying, I was trying to help her navigate this idea of like not being available for everything. And so I said, someone had said something in a board meeting and they were trying to reconcile it and they wanted to call me to explain it to me, and I just said, oh, that's okay, I don't need the explanation, right? And so I think we think that we owe it to the person to allow them to break a boundary and then like try to solve it. And I
Hmm.
just was like, and so I don't have any ill will.
Hmm.
I'm not harboring that because that would be for me, but I'm also just not going to hold space for someone else, right? To try to rectify something because I don't have a problem with it. I've let it go.
Hmm.
But I also have now decided how we can best function together, right? So
Right.
all of these things can be true. And I think when we start making decisions for other people, or in other people's best interest, but not our own, that's a tricky way to navigate life, right? And unfortunately, we're taught, what are we taught? We're taught treat other people as you want to be treated, right?
Hmm.
But we're not actually taught to treat ourselves really
So
amazingly
true.
well,
So
you know?
true. So true. So true. And that's the thing that we leave out. And I firmly believe, like we say, love others as you love yourself, right? Listen to what that says, as you love yourself. So first you have to love yourself first.
Yourself.
But somehow we skipped over that part. And we
Yeah.
don't we don't do all of the things to love ourselves. We don't have good boundaries. We don't know how to say no. All of that is about loving yourself.
100%. I tell people all the time, one of my favorite quotes, I said this quote to Les Brown, and he was like, "Girl, that is the biggest quote I've heard."
That would
It's
be
like,
less.
you're exactly right. I said, "Show me your life, and I'll show you what you believe you're worthy of having." So people
Ooh.
try to get on with us and as coaches, and they'll try to explain to me how they think they're worthy and how they know their
Mhm.
value and how they're good at boundaries. And I'm like, your life speaks for itself,
Mhm.
right? And what we do is we have these subtle ways of actually lying to ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And that's where that like toxic positivity versus like actual happiness
Mhm.
comes in, right? Like I don't want us to ever lie to our brain,
Mhm.
right? Because then we are actually saying, I'm not good enough to share with you that I'm not having a great day, to share with myself that I'm not in a great space, right? So we want to feel all the emotions,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yep.
that's the human experience. But we want to spend the majority of our time in those high vibration emotions. Why? Because that's where we're meant to be. Those dense emotions are just to tell us that we're off track.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So much wisdom there. So let's talk about having it all. Now, Brandy, you look
Okay.
like that girl. You look like the girl that has it all, right? So let's unpack the notion of having it all. Is that
Okay.
helpful to us? Is it helpful to women? Is it helpful to our community? What does it mean? And where is that in relation to happiness, having it all?
Yeah. Okay. Let's answer this in a few
I know I
different
gave you a
ways.
lot of questions there.
I love that though. First of all, I absolutely believe you can have it all. I really do. I really do. And I absolutely believe I have it all. I am so grateful for this life that I have. A couple things though. I think you have to define it all on your own terms,
Mhm.
right? So it all if it all is that we want a big house because I grew up thinking a big house was a thing, and I want a Mercedes not because I like it but because that's what people with money drive, and if I want to be the VP at a corporation, right? Like, so if your list of it all was made by someone or something external to you, no, you can't have that because those aren't the dreams of your heart. But
Mm.
I do know in this lifetime that all the dreams of your heart come from God, source, the universe, and they are meant for you. And there is a path for you to align with them because why else would you have them? So I know that your dreams that you have created, that your soul has aligned to, those are meant for you. And that's my definition of having it all. But, however, I don't, we cannot wait until we have it all in order to be happy because then what happens? You'll never have it all.
Exactly.
So you have to be in this state of gratitude, in this state of contentment for the present moment, whatever that present moment is bringing to you. And in that space, from that place, you then can align with more.
I love that. Um, Gosh, so much to add or to say onto that. You know, I love that you are comfortable with saying I have it all because I feel like sometimes we make ourselves small or we feel like there's some level of guilt attached to saying I have it all. You know what I mean? Like it sounds too arrogant. But what's wrong with saying I have it all? And like you said, my have it all may be different from your have it all. What's wrong with women, especially black women, that we're not comfortable with saying I have it all?
Well, I think
Mhm.
society, right, teaches us. I said my best friend, she and I, we grew up in Detroit, and we never wanted for anything, but we didn't have a ton of money, right?
Mhm.
And now, we both have these amazing lives. She's the CEO of the largest health system in America. I've done very well in my life. And so we have like night and day. And it's this really interesting thing. She and her family were here for Christmas, and I said, when I was a little girl, right? Like, I didn't want anyone to think that we were poor, right? So you're like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm poor. And
Mhm.
then you get to the point where you're rich, and you're like, oh, I'm hiding that I'm rich. You're like hiding all the things. It's like, well, what is it? I mean, it's like, well, I can't tell people that we don't have a lot of money, and maybe we have to wait till the next paycheck to do something. And I also now don't want to tell people that, like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's this really interesting thing that you start to realize that it has nothing to do with the money. It's about being able to live out loud, to stand in your truth.
Right,
It's about
exactly.
truth. It's not about the money. It never was about the money, and it never is, right? It's about, like, I show up for the world, and it just is. I do feel really good about my life, but I don't feel better than you. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm better than you, and I want you to. I invite everyone who looks like me to feel this way about their own life.
Right, absolutely. Yes. I love all of that. And cuz I even sometimes when I'm, post on social media, I'm like, "Ooh, is this too flashy?" Or, "I don't want to show this part of my house." That kind of thing because it's like
Yeah.
I don't want to feel too ostentatious. I don't want to feel like I'm showing, I'm just very mindful of that. And I don't, I'm trying to understand where that is coming from because like you said, we've worked hard to get here, right?
Yep.
And especially, I'm always like, if you knew me when to now, you can
Yep.
see, and I'm always a believer in like, you don't know how hard someone had to work to obtain what they have, right? And so also, I think that when we talk about having it all, I feel like we have these check boxes, and many of them are like very material, like you said, like the big house, right? Check. Certain square footage, check. You know, the Mercedes, check. The this, check. The position, the type, check, check. We're checking all of these boxes, but then you check these boxes and you're like, okay, that what, okay,
Now
I
what?
checked the boxes. Now
Yep.
what, right? And so you're thinking there's something else out there. And I'll give you another great story. There's an athlete, I can't remember his name. I'm not, my husband is a sports fan, I'm not. But we were watching, just flipping the channels, ESPN one day, and I remember this athlete, and he made a powerful statement. He said, I've won various championships. I have several rings. I've traveled all around the world. I've dated the most beautiful women you can think of. I've eaten at the finest restaurants. I've visited, many different cities. All of them start to look alike to me. And he was like, I have my bank account speaks for itself, but at the end of the day, I don't know what there is to do. So I think that goes to show that like there's you can check all of the boxes, right? But why are you checking those boxes? Is that a part of your dream? And is that the things that's going to make you happy? Are those really
Yeah.
the things that's going to drive you? And at
They
the
absolutely won't. But I also say, not, and I mean this, and I like say it a little tongue in cheek, but I say, like, I'm gonna tell you right now that, like, being rich ain't gonna make you happy, but you gonna still want to find out for yourself. And so I do get it, right? Like money is this sense of safety that, especially for people that haven't felt very safe in this nation, like, they aspire to that as a way of grounding themselves, as a way of scaffolding them sin. And so I don't begrudge anyone that, but
Mhm,
I am absolutely going to tell you that, like, this is a faster way to get to that end
mhm,
goal. But also, if you choose to go this alternate direction, which I also went in, that, like, once you get there, you're going to wake up and say, oh, and I also don't always love that message for black people, like, money ain't gonna make you happy. Well, okay, but if I'm gonna be unhappy, I'd rather be unhappy with money. I'll tell you that part, right? Because I will say that, it's taken a lot of work and a big investment to get to where I've gotten, right? So there are things that money afford us. And so
mhm,
I never want people to begrudge money. Like, it is a resource
Mm-hmm.
that in a capitalistic society
Mm-hmm.
you do need access to. So I don't begrudge it to anyone, and I actually encourage people not to look down on it. It actually has, I don't think any, it's not good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a resource
It's a
that we
resource.
need,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it won't change how you feel
Mm-hmm.
inside. And most of us believe that all these things that we say, to your point, are having it all, that those things are going to fill this void
Mm-hmm.
that we feel, and they won't, right? And for me, like, the biggest reason I think I have it all is this sense of peace, right? And this sense of peace, like, no one can take that from me.
Mm-hmm. And that's the main thing I think we all should be striving for. um, is that sense of peace, right? And waking up every morning in peace and not, feeling overwhelmed with all of the emotions about what the day is going to bring. But I'm ready to go. I'm waking up. I'm ready to go, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. So, why do you think our elders did not talk about happiness and um, having it all and so on? I know my mom, she never talked about happiness. Never heard that word until lately as she got older. And now to me, I'm looking at her and she's okay, my job is done. I'm focusing on happiness now. But when I was a kid, I never heard that. Never heard my grandmother talk about happiness, none of that. Now everybody's talking about it. Why do you think our elders weren't able to have those conversations?
I think um I try to have so much grace with our elders, right?
Mhm.
And I know that at any given moment, we are all doing the absolute best we can. And people, when they know better, they do better. So,
Mhm.
and that is so important for me to say, because um, they have set this foundation for us to be where we are. Like, one thing I always point out to people when they kind of want to do this, like, pull yourself up by the bootstrap
Mhm.
story, for our family is, like, my husband and I both have parents and grandparents who went to college, right? So
Mhm.
what do you know that means? That means wealth is built over generations. We're
Mhm.
not like some special anomalies, right?
Mhm.
Like, we just, like, ended up in this, like, really fortunate set of circumstances
Mhm.
that has propelled us forward to be in this space, right? And there are exceptions, but by and large, like, wealth is built over time, right? And so what I know for sure is that our ancestors, they just were trying to keep us alive. They were trying to
Mhm.
keep us safe, and they were passing that on. And happiness was a privilege we could not afford,
So
right?
true.
And so, because it just felt like you're taking your eye off the ball, right? And that's why we're here. So I have so much gratitude to them. I have so much grace. I also say, when my dad is like, well, you turned out fine. I'm like, I did turn out fine. And I'm also going to raise my son in a slightly different way, with the same core values, but this different lens of prioritizing happiness.
Your dad sounds like my uncle's. That's like the phrase, and I thought, well, you turned out fine.
Turned out fine.
Um, yeah, and I think I completely agree with you because I think you know back then our elders were focused on surviving. Our generation, we are thriving. So
Thriving.
so I think because we're thriving, we are free, so to speak, to have this type of conversations, to have these dialogue and to think about, okay, what do I want to do that is really going to bring happiness? How can I bring more happiness and joy into my life? That's one of the conversations I have myself probably daily is what am I doing and is it bringing me joy? Is it bringing me peace? Is it am
Yes.
I is this house in general? I want my kids when they come home from the craziness at school, I want them to walk in and feel love, feel happiness, feel joy, feel peace, all of
Yeah.
those things, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always in that mind space of thinking about that. Whereas I think, mom and them they were just thinking about, we need to put food on the table, I need to keep y'all safe, all of those types of things, right?
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So if we are
absolutely.
still just doing like food, clothing, and shelter, and those are things that we are like making sure that we have available to us, we can't move up towards self actualization. Like,
Right.
girl, I'm trying to keep you warm, keep food on your table, and like clothes on your back and a roof over your head. Like, that is all I have the capacity to do. And
Hmm.
so I invite us, even as a community, I always segment that out, right? Like sometimes people will say, like, oh, I want to do what you do. I want to do like no screen time for my kid and this and that. And it's like, well, you're hustling, like you're a single mom and you're trying to like work a couple jobs. Like maybe TV time's okay in your family,
Hmm.
right? Like, so I think we have to meet people where they are, right? But we also, I think, to advance as a community, when people are well resourced, and I don't just mean that financially, but when they have the emotional capacity to, we really need to invite them into this different way of exploring the world and experiencing the world, because it will lift us all
Hmm.
as a community and as a nation, really.
Absolutely. And I also think when you are, as you described it, more resourced, right? I think you begin to think of like, okay, what can I do differently? Because and even thinking on financial terms, one of the things about money, as we talked about, it gives you more options, right? And so now you're like,
Flexibility.
flexibility and definitely more options, right? When you don't have a lot of money, you're stuck in one section of the airplane. When you do have more money, you're like, oh, I can choose business class, I can choose
This.
first. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you ask yourself, so when it frees you up so that you can think about more of what you can do and think outside of the box, so to speak. And I
Yeah.
think creativity flows when you're in that area. So, with that being said, we are definitely in turbulent times, right? And I don't want to
Yeah.
overlook that, where there's a lot of uncertainty. How can you maintain happiness with all of the uncertainty surrounding you, or if you are in a situation where you're feeling unsure, uncertain, or maybe you just, lost your job that you've been employed at for 20 years, making the six figures, what do you say?
Yeah. So a few things I say. One, um, I really think it's important. I actually just wrote a Substack about this yesterday, so I have a very strong position on this question. I think we have to put ourselves in two different buckets, right? So if you lost your job yesterday, is very different than like, oh, the world is in such an uncertain place, right? And so what we oftentimes do, right, is we worry in advance, which by definition puts us in a position to be more likely aligned with the negative outcome we're seeking to avoid. Now, again, we don't have to be magical and mystical. Let's just talk about this from a scientific perspective. If you choose, and I'm saying choose, if you choose to put yourself into a state of fight or flight, you don't have any available energy to do anything else, because that's how our bodies work. So now you can't like advance in any way. And when we're in those dense emotions, we by definition are in this state of fight or flight. And so that's a just primal survival mode. There's no advancement there. And what I see happening in society is people, they start spinning and getting upset about something that's not actually impacting them. And it doesn't actually have an imminent chance of impacting them. I was talking to my two girlfriends, the one that I just told you like runs a $35 billion hospital, and my other girlfriend like runs her own company, and she's like, "But there's so much uncertainty, like I just don't know what to do. The stock market is down." I was like, "Are you going to sell the stock?" And she's like, "Well, no, I have like a long orientation." Okay, so that's not a problem, right? Like we know it eventually will come back. Like we have history to tell us it always does. And the three of us are just on this call, and I'm like, you guys, like we can't worry about things that actually haven't yet happened, because it doesn't help us avoid them, right? So I invite people to live in the present moment. And if right now everything is okay, then right now everything is okay. And I believe that this organized chaos is purposeful. Because if I can get an entire nation to take their eye off the ball, to not be focused, then what does that give me? That gives me ever more power, ever more control, because you aren't just like operating at your highest level, right? And so, in a world where most people believe in scarcity, the best way for me to yield power is to get you to be in a constant state of chaos, right? To your
Absolutely.
point earlier, like we see chaos in our world, we know, like, oh, my office is messy, my room is messy, something's not right.
Mhm.
When there's chaos in our mind, there's chaos in our life. And I think this time in our history is purposefully creating chaos to see who will rise above it.
Mhm. Absolutely, yes. And so to that point, I have a girlfriend and she's a federal government employee. And she's watching the news and so on, and she's like, it could be me, like you said, spiraling. It could be me, and if it does, I'm going to do this, and if it did, And I think the worry, I think sometimes we think it gives us agency, like we're in control because I'm worried. I don't know why, but I feel like sometimes we feel that way. Like it means that I'm in control here because I'm in it. I know I'm feeling my feelings and I know I'm
I'm creating
prepared.
all these.
Yes, but
Yes.
it doesn't. And so she kept, if I could like it kept going. If I could when I could let and I said, there's a chance you may not. Have we explored that? There's a chance that you may not, right? And so have we I was like, let's explore what happens if you don't get the email. Okay,
At a
let's
minimum, let's look at both sides of the story, right? Like,
yeah.
I love that. You're a good friend for that, right?
Yeah, like
And
you
I
you've
think
prepared. You prepared for yeah, but
the
let's
worst
let's go over
outcome.
here and
Yeah.
put our minds here so that we're not spending all day reeling and spiraling and going to,
Yeah.
because it's
I
like
tell people,
because it's
yeah,
like I'm gonna lose my house. You go through this whole list of things and you go all the way down to the very worst case. And then
right.
I was telling her, I was like, listen, we're resilient. We're resilient people. You're going to be fine. I mean, you're educated, you have experience. I mean,
You're going to be fine.
yeah. So, but what were you going to say, Brandy?
Well, I think you have to know that part about going to be fine. And I always say to people, if you worry in advance and then the thing happens, will you be any less upset? And if you worry in advance and then it doesn't happen, will you wish that you hadn't worried? So
Mhm.
in neither scenario does the worrying help. Because if you worried, you're going to be like, oh, I shouldn't have worried all that time. It all worked out fine. And then if you worry and it doesn't happen, you're like, oh, you're not going to say, I already worried, so I don't need to be upset now. Right. So either way, it's like just live in this present moment,
Right.
attack the day, day by day. And I am confident that you'll actually have far fewer bad things happen to you by living through that lens, by moving through that lens, right? In a world where we can help shape our reality, that's one thing that I offer to people as a means of actually not having kind of all of these bad things happen to them.
Exactly. For the worry warts out there. And listen, I'm a recovering worrier. So this is why
Me too.
I I know this and I firmly believe you suffer twice when you worry, right? Like before the thing happens, you're already worried, you're stressed, you're suffering, right? Instead of, and you look back and you're like, I could have been enjoying my life. Like I can remember I went on a trip and I was worried about something happening. Can't remember what it was. And then the thing didn't happen. I'm like, well, that's I could have been living my best life on the trip. Instead, I was worried and stressed and all of these things. And but none of those things happened.
At all.
So
But what did happen? You missed out on a great vacation. That happened.
exactly, exactly. So it's like, have to really be mindful that we are really suffering twice when we are worrying and over worrying and over analyzing, overthinking a situation.
For sure. For sure.
So, what do you say to someone who may be listening to this and they may
Okay.
say, I see some of me, I hear some of me in what Brandy said. I may be unhappy. I don't know what to do. What advice would you give someone who sees themselves in this conversation?
You know, I would say, to start a journey to align with an increased level of happiness, right? And there's three things that I recommend to people. If you have no money, if you can't spend a dime to improve your self, if personal development is not in your current budget, one way that I can help you get it in your budget is by doing these three things, which cost you nothing. So, one, I invite people to have a gratitude practice, like a
Mm.
beautiful, heartfelt gratitude practice where, like, in the moment when something great happens for you, you like pause, you feel that emotion of gratitude, and you really like are constantly sending signals out that you are finding ways to like love this life, right? Two, I invite people to meditate. And this can oftentimes be something that people, think is going to be challenging for them and they're not know how they can get there. But I remind people, this isn't my quote, but the point of meditation isn't to quiet your mind. It's just to meditate. So just do it, right? Just do it. Don't feel like obligated that it has to look one way or another or a different way. Just sit with yourself, right? And then the third is to every morning just like dump your brain onto a piece of paper. So a stream of consciousness journal. And if you do those three things in any way, shape, or form, whether it be a couple minutes a day or an hour a day or a couple hours if you have it, whatever amount of time, but consistently, I promise you'll move closer to the joy that you're seeking.
I love that because you are really filling your cup. You are really filling your cup when you do those three things. In terms of gratitude, I really try hard to sit in gratitude, right? Because it's easy for me because I have so many things going on. When something good happens, when my daughter makes brings home a report card and it's all A's, or someone gives me a compliment or whatever the case is, it's easy to go on to the next thing quickly. And I'm
Yeah,
trying to now like sit with that. Like sit in that moment and just absorb it and take it all in and let the gratitude wash over me, right? And
I
so I
love that.
invite you all to do those three things because I really believe that is truly filling your cup, and especially meditation, quieting your mind. That is one way that we can really reset our central nervous system is through that meditation. Like you talked about the fight or flight, and you're always in fight or flight mode. I was that person that was in fight or flight mode. And so I really had to work to reset my system so that I can get to a peaceful baseline. So that
Yeah,
when something happens, we're not overwhelmed by it, we're not triggered by it, and we can stay in a rational state of mind when that happens. So please listen to Brandy, do those three things, and that will help you get on the start of your journey to happiness. For those who want to follow you, for those who say, hey, you know what, she said a lot of great things, I want to work with her, I want to hire her for our retreat or whatever the case is, how can we find you, Brandy?
you can find me in all places at Brandi with an I, brandybhudson.com, Brandi B. Hudson on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. And then you can email me at Brandi at hibrandi, just hibrandi.com. You can find me there. And I love to hear from people. I publish a Substack every Monday, and every other Thursday, I actually publish a question and answer podcast where people just send me questions about their life and I just answer all the questions. And I love it. It's called The Happiest Place. And that's also the name of my Substack. So I'd love to find people there. And I just love connecting with fellow humans in any way.
I love that. Send Brandy your questions. Y'all heard that. Shout her out, find her, follow her. Book her. She is awesome. I know you, if you heard this podcast, you listen to this podcast, and you want to tell her how great she is, shoot her over a message. All right. Thank you, Brandi. We appreciate you. It's an honor, my sister, to share this space with you. Thank you all listeners for coming back, tuning into the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds. I'm Nijiama Smalls. Please follow me if you're not Nijiama Smalls in real life on Instagram, and visit the website, the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds.com. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Bye. Thank you.